Hi, this is Mega Geek and I'm Dan. It is 2022, my goodness. And as is tradition now, it's time for a workshop tour. I have the traditional jumper of the workshop tour. The previous year's workshops have been reviewed so that I can kind of keep in mind what did change this year versus last year. Of course, for everyone, these years bleed into one another. So I've got a pretty good idea about what's changed. So without further ado, let's get to it. We'll start over there. So, metalworking corner, as with last year, not a huge amount has changed. I did say last year that my trusty metal cutting bandsaw was out of action because the rubber tire had split. I couldn't find any replacements for love nor money at the time. In this year, I both bought replacements because eventually they were a reasonable price, but I also cast my own replacement rubber band, which you might be able to see in here, this orange thing here, well, orangey yellow, and that has been doing fantastically, honestly. That was so easy to do. Yeah, it's been a troop. I've done a ton of cutting with it since. The other thing over here is that I have the instrument vise project that I worked on for a chunk of last year. This is really great for filing small parts, so it kind of lives over here with the big vise. This was a fun and challenging project. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it for here. So let's go this way. So the other thing obviously I did before we get to this corner is I set up the auto visual tracking on the camera, which is pretty good, a little bit flaky, but we'll see how it gets on for the rest of this. Like, it works very well, but I often move too quickly for it. Anyway, so here we have Cnc Corner. This has changed a lot since last year. And fairly recently, I hadn't made many changes to the CNC machine. I hadn't really used it very much. I actually came to use it during this year, and it didn't work. Oh well, the homing process failed because the limit switch on Z-axis had come adrift. I had stuck it in place with double-sided sticky tape. All of the people that told me that that wouldn't hold, after about 4 years, you were right, it didn't it didn't hold eventually. And I thought, well, I could just stick it back in place, but actually I've been thinking about upgrading it for a while, so this whole area is under change. We have a whole new Cnc Unit. I did make a video of getting this far. This is the kind of the main body of the new stand. I'm going to put a enclosure on top here, and I have a project in mind for maybe this year, hopefully this year, where I will build into this a whole kind of workbench that pulls out, so I'll have work surface that then tucks away and drawers and stuff to make use of this big cavernous area here. And obviously this is all in progress of upgrade. I have some fancy linear rails and some fancy lead screws. So yeah, new fancy bowl screw lead screws, which will hopefully be a big upgrade. And yeah, this is in progress. I've been designing new panels, various iterations of gantry panels being tested with the laser cutter. I think this is almost final now, so these will kind of go on here. Obviously not plywood, they will be made in metal. I could have gone with one of the various open source available designs for such things, but I decided, what the hell, let's make it yourself. Basically reusing all of the aluminium extrusion from the original Ox, but refactoring it and then, yeah, adding the upgrades. So lots of change here. That's probably all going to come in this year. Let's go this way. We started here, no change to the workbench. Back walls. See, I have to make sure I don't do it too quickly. New 3D printer. So this is the Elegoo Mars 2 resin printer. It's been fun to do some more detail stuff. I printed a bunch of mini stuff for my nephew, but also it's good enough that you can print a thread, like a nut and a bolt, and they will thread together properly. So it's quite good for doing some more precise prototyping. It is a little bit finicky. The precision, I don't know, I'm still dialing in basically, but pretty good. So that and the wash station lives here, along with all the other stuff that hasn't really changed. What I might do is try and bring you in a bit closer to see the laser. Right, quick reposition on the camera. So the laser. The main difference is this wee handle here is controlling a scissor lift bed inside, so I can adjust the height up and down from the outside, which is cool. I originally tried it to see whether it would let me cut through thicker materials by like doing a couple of passes and then raising the focal point, and it works pretty well. Cut a few things, but the main thing is it's just way easier for dealing with different thicknesses of material that you want to work on to keep the surface at the right height. So there's a video on making that was this year. Other than that, not, again, a lot of changes on this side. Still kind of need to figure out what my plan overall is. But if we come down here, let me move that out of the way. New toy. So this was a Christmas present. Nice new Arbor Press. This I've already used to reclaim some bearings that I had pressed into something that I wanted to get out again. I've been wanting something like this for a while, and now that I'm doing a bit more metalworky type stuff, I think it's useful to have. Sits alongside last year's present of the metal shears, which is very cool. And tucked around the back here, you can just see a whole bunch of new T-handle Allen wrenches, because you can't have enough of those around, and I keep having to hunt for things, so I figured I'd just end up getting more sets to use for different things. So now let's move on. This is the woodworking side again, so Woodworking Lathe, just behind here. Doesn't get a lot of use, but it is useful to have when you need it. I had made this the previous year, chop saw station on top of the shop vac. This has been useful, having it on wheels. It is a little bit of a faff to move around, but the fact that I can move it around is very convenient. And to that end, big change this year was the table saw. This used to sit kind of out here on the legs that the table saw came with, and it was a pain. This is now on its own wheeled base. I won't move it out now, but it does mean I can tuck it away when I don't need it, and I can easily move it out. This has the planer thickness down here, which I've never really been able to use the planer part of this very well. Either I just don't understand the process, or it's not very well calibrated. It always seems to kind of lift off in a weird way. But I do use the thicknesser a lot, and I can use that pass through whilst it's sat here. Very convenient. Other than that, this side is still basically the same. Bandsaw, chop saw, messy set of storage, drill press in the background. All good woodworking tools, not a lot to change. The two new things really are over here, so it's time for another camera reposition, I think, and I will bring you in for a better look. Lathe on the awesome workbench that I built for the lathe. Again, I think last year, I did have the first two. I didn't have the big deep drawer at the bottom. During the last year, I put a DRO on the main axis of the lathe. I did also make a super low profile DRO for the cross slide, but I often don't use it just because it's not as useful and it does get in the way a little bit, kind of toyed back and forth. But yeah, it's a little bit messy at the moment. I did tidy this recently. This year I'm probably gonna make a powered cross slide for this. So I have been just connecting a drill to the end with a socket that doesn't want to come off, which actually is very effective at just doing a powered cross slide where I can adjust the rate very easily. That means I can actually leave the gearbox set up for threading, but disconnected, which is quite useful. But yeah, I might follow in the old AIDS workshop plan of putting a stepper motor or something on the end so that I can control that with a little bit more ease and something that's sort of built in rather than using the drill every time. But this has been a fantastic tool this year. I've made a bunch of things on it. Obviously I built the instrument vise, which I just showed you, but also pens and components and such. And of course that brings us at last to the big new thing for this year, which is the mill, the WM18 Warco mill. This has been a fantastic purchase. I built another workbench for it. This one has 2 sets of 3 narrower shelves, but again lets me have all of the materials, drill bits, end mills, collets, chucks, etc. nice and to hand. Again, looking a little bit messy at the moment because I have been using it quite a lot. This is what I'm going to use to machine the plates for the CNC. I have a couple of chunks of metal rough cut ready for that. And yeah, this was a cool purchase. I put the DRO on all 3 axes. Let me flip that one out of the way. So it has its own DRO, which is fantastic. This was a beast to get into the workshop because it is incredibly heavy. I had to take it apart, take the head off it, take the table off it. Even then, each of those parts, I could just about lift the head on its own. Table required assistance, and the main body itself was a real challenge. But I did a whole video about unboxing it and getting it in place. I'll put link to all the videos from the last year that I've mentioned below. But that's it for this year, I think. Oh, I did definitely mention last year that I have a projector and a projector screen. I can't really use those at the moment because I put the mill in the way. At some point I'm going to find maybe a different location to put those. But yeah, lots of plans, lots of things that I have in mind to make in the next year. Hopefully there'll be more interesting videos. For now though, hopefully this was a good little workshop tour. Happy 2022. I look forward to seeing you all out there in the world. Thanks for watching. See you next time.